A thought for Pesach: pain is part of freedom. Perhaps the most important section of the entire Haggadah is the Manishtana and Avadim Hayinu. These two paragraphs are a synopsis of the entire evening. The question and the answer: we were once slaves, Avadim Hayinu. The child asks four questions which are essentially one question. What do we want to remember, and what message do we wish to convey on the night of Pesach? Is the night about liberation and redemption, or is it about suffering and poverty? On the one hand, we have matzah, which is a reminder of the redemption because the flour didn't have a chance to rise and we had to leave in haste. On the other hand, the matzah is the bread of poverty and suffering. Ha lahma anya, this is the bread of affliction. On the one hand, we eat maror, which is a sign of bitterness. On the other hand, we're drinking 4 cups of wine, acting like free men, reclining like aristocracy. And so the child is confused. Is Pesach, is this evening tonight about the suffering of slavery, or is it about the joy of redemption? And this is the essence of Manishtana. What's going on? And so the answer to his question is that there are 2 elements to this night. We were slaves and Hashem took us out. There is the pain of suffering and the joy of salvation. And so we commemorate both things. We enact our freedom, but also remind ourselves of the suffering we went through, hence the dichotomy of the night. There is this inherent paradox in the evening because we are actually commemorating 2 things. But fundamentally, why is it important to talk about the slavery? Why can't we just talk about the redemption? In fact, the Hachamim said, "Mat'hil bignutum tzayim b'shevach." An integral part of the evening is to talk about the past, to talk about the difficulty we went through. Why eat the maror and remind ourselves of all the bad memories? Why go through all the bad? Just talk about the liberation. So on a simple level, only one who suffers darkness can appreciate light. The Pasuk in Eicha says, Ki yashavti b'choshech orli. Only after sitting in dark do we appreciate light. Only a nation which suffers slavery can appreciate redemption and freedom. This is why to appreciate the redemption means to talk about the slavery. But on a deeper level, it goes far deeper. When we achieve full faith in Emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we understand that the galut, the exile, the suffering, the pain, is actually all part of the redemption and the freedom. Everything which HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, although difficult for us to understand, is actually, as Rabbi Akiva famously said, Kol ma David Rahamana letavavid. Everything which God does is ultimately for the best. We appreciate the freedom that we go through tonight, but we also have to have in mind the fact that Kadosh Baruch Hu is also with us in the most difficult times, and the trouble and the suffering we go through is actually an essential part of the liberation and is a necessary good. This is why we first eat matzah, and then maror, the matzah being the freedom, the maror being the bitterness. And then we make a sandwich, a korech of the 2 foods. Matzah is the freedom, maror is the bitterness, and it's natural in life to see these 2 aspects of life as 2 disparate parts of our lives, but we eat them together. And we say actually the matzah and the maror are the same and is one, and everything that God does is for the best. Korech conveys this message that maybe the matzah and the maror are not thus far apart. And at the end of days we'll realize and see how everything comes together, and the entire exile was a facade. All the suffering we went through was actually all for the good. And this is why, if we notice the story, the 5 Hachamim who were in Bnei Barak, what were they doing in Bnei Barak? Where were their families? What was going on? And the answer is Rabbi Akiva lived in Bnei Barak. And Rabbi Akiva, there are various stories throughout the Talmud. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but there's one story in Berachot 60b. There's another story in Sanhedrin 101a, and the third story in Makot 24a. 3 stories which demonstrate very clearly how Rabbi Akiva was seen by his colleagues as being the beacon of light, the person of optimism, the person who was able to see in darkness, in the most difficult times, able to see how from the depth of galut, from the depth of difficulty, from the depth of darkness, will come the depth of the salvation. And so this is why all the Hachamim came to Rabbi Akiva's home. It was a troubling time for the Jewish people in the times of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lived just after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Rabbi Akiva himself believed that Bar Kokhba was the Mashiach. And things went wrong. And there was any hope which they had after the destruction of the temple of being rebuilt was extinguished when Bar Kokhba was killed. And the Hachamim of the time were feeling down and sad, and so they went to Rabbi Akiva. They went to Rabbi Akiva for the inspiration, because they knew Rabbi Akiva was the person who saw that within all the darkness and all the suffering will actually be the light. And yes, we can't always see it, but that's our belief. When we believe in Yehud Hashem, we believe in the unity of God, which is all about Pesach is about tonight. We stress over and over again, Ani v'lo malach, Ani v'lo saraf, it's all in the hands of Hashem. We recognize that actually everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And yes, we are going through a difficult time collectively as a nation, but we need to have faith, although we can't see it, that ultimately HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the mastermind of this world. And all the difficulty, all the suffering which we go through, individually and as a nation, everything will one day we will see how all of that was actually L'Tavavid, was for the best, and we'll be able to have our korech, we'll be able to have our matzah and marov together, to see how the bitterness was actually part of the sweetness, how everything comes together beautifully. Chag Sameach, Tizkor L'Shem Rabot, Ne'imot V'Tovot, wishing everyone a beautiful Chag.